Hey, what's going on? So, obviously, no introduction needed here for Albert Pujols. Just one of the best hitters who ever lived. Um, obviously got a clip up here when he's with St. Louis, and depending on the types of, or I guess the years that you watch Albert as he kind of goes through his career, he kind of changes some of his loading mechanisms and gets into some more leg kicks. But this is kind of prime Albert Pujols as far as what I can remember him doing, back when he was with St. Louis. And there's a couple things that I just absolutely love about this swing. Um, he has a peculiar setup, I think, at least with his lower half to some degree. And I generally don't like the um, the back foot turned in, but we'll kind of get to that in just a second. Um, so, just the first couple observations here is, in this gather and in this kind of load here, you can really see just how much torque he's creating by, by pushing against, um, the ground and into his heel here so that he can counter the other direction without having a big shift backwards. I think you see a lot of really great hitters do this to some degree, and some of them have their front leg kind of swing backwards. Sorry, that arrow didn't really work. And some of them do a lot of different things, but generally, what you see in some really elite hitters is you don't really see this this like big massive shift backwards. You actually kind of see pressure down into the heel, but then the kind of counterbalance forward immediately, if that makes sense. And that's really something that I think Albert does really well. So if we kind of go back to the setup here, he's kind of waiting on his timing mechanism. You can really see this kind of shift down into this pressure down into the heel, and then a counterbalance forward. And that's really where I kind of want to pick up this this back foot again. And so if we kind of watch this back foot as he starts to load through this, you can see that toe kind of swivel outwards. And that toe swiveling outwards kind of tells you a lot about how he's digging in the ground and ultimately how he lands, which is a far different position than where he starts with that toe kind of pinched in. And so a lot of people don't even if they start here, or I should say when they start here, don't actually use the ground properly, and it kind of forces them to come out of the zone and kind of be a little bit more to the pull side. But you can see Pujols really does a good job of kind of getting into that heel, and then when he lands, he's in a pretty balanced position with the head kind of center and forward, relative to like what he would have to do with a shift backwards. And this is really obviously a really great position to hit from. Level knees, level hips, level shoulders, and some leverage on the bat, back here. Um, and so, the other thing I want to call attention to is, as he's kind of going to this ball, right? As he's kind of timing this up and he gets into this kind of downward position here, we can see, these shoulders and hip line kind of, being pretty level, but at some point they're going to intersect, you know, out here. So let me get like a little squiggle, maybe like somewhere out here, right? Or maybe it's a little further out here. But the idea is that they're going to intersect somewhere out in front of him this way when he's loading to hit. Whereas what you'll see in some great hitters is then obviously at some point that's going to have to shift backwards when they go to actually swing, at the pitch, right? So now we've got this kind of working backwards, this hip kind of, this way, and, we're going to see these intersect back here. And when you can see hitters do that um, in a pretty like confined space, it really shows that they have a lot of control over their trunk and their spine, and these moves kind of help them get their elbows, or I should say, get the bat on plane back behind them without actually having to compromise the kind of the body position that they're in. And Albert does that just like in such an elite way by going from kind of like downhill, slightly level to, that transition into on plane and then out through the ball. And it's awesome to see, obviously. And then the last thing that I just love about Pujols is, or at least this clip of him is, kind of when we get into impact and through impact, just how long he holds the angle of the bat, right? And so, he makes contact about in this frame here. And so if we were going to draw kind of an angle between the hands and the bat, if we keep going, we can continue to draw these angles for several frames. And he still has this space here between his arms, long, 3, 4, 5 frames after contact. And so with that, you can kind of observe that he's not really throwing the bat. He's holding onto those angles through his core, through his chest, and with good direction, not just ripping out of there. And that's just elite. He's not dumping all that stuff out, and he's using that leverage that he's created to put it into the ball. So obviously no surprise here. One of the greatest of all time, just an absolute legend, Albert Pujols.